Hello and welcome to another episode of Unworthy History. I'm your host, Daryl Worthy. Now, here on this channel, we try to promote actual history and the retention and knowledge of what came in the past. We try to fill in the gap that's been left by the History Channel abandoning their mission, so they don't show history anymore. But today we're going to show some history that's unworthy of TV channels like the History Channel. So I'm going to be bringing you another story from this book, Indian Depredations in Texas by J.W. Wellbarger. The final edition of this book was published around 1880 or so, and so it's a very old book, and we like to read old books to keep the history of them alive. And to give some perspective on what it was like, before today. And so what I'm going to read tonight is the story of a man named John McLellan. Now, you may have heard of McLennan County, Texas. That's where Waco is, so it's right, smack dab in the middle of the heart of Texas. So McClellan, Texas, was actually named by this John McLellan. It was named after his uncle, who was named Neil McClellan. So all of the McLellan brothers, or I think three of them total, there was Neil, and then John's father was also named John, and then another McClellan brother as well. They came to Texas very early on, during the days of the Republic. So this is going to be a story about them and about John McLellan, the young boy, his ordeal with Indians. The nativity of John McLellan is unknown to the writer. Now, I should say that the nativity is unknown to the writer at this time. That was J.W. Wellbarger, but now we know that the McClellans actually were born in Scotland, so they were born on the Isle of Skye. And so they were Scottish immigrants at this time, and of course they didn't come to Texas first. They came to other parts of the U.S. And settled in Florida, and then eventually they made their way to Texas. His father was among the first of the early settlers in Texas and was a well-known character where he resided. He settled on the Brazos River where the city of Waco now stands. He had many conflicts with the Indians, who then frequently raided that section of the country, but always came out unhurt. But he was doomed to be slain by them at last. A party of Indians attacked his house when he was unsuspicious of danger and unprepared to meet it, and murdered him as well as several others of his family, and took his little son John McLellan, the subject of this sketch, who was then a lad just 8 or 10 years of age, a prisoner. They then left for the mountains, taking with them a number of their horses they had stolen from Mr. McClellan and others. They did not halt until they reached the villages where they lived on the Red River. The Indians kept young McClellan until he was a grown man. In 1846, a treaty was made with these Indians, and young McClellan was restored to his relatives. He had almost forgotten his native tongue, and when interrogated as to his capture, he could only describe the massacre of his father and family by the aid of signs. He had become greatly attached to the Indians, among whom he had lived so long, and it was with much difficulty that his friends and relatives prevented him from going back to them at once. However, they finally persuaded him to stay with them for 1 moon a month. During that moon, and it proved to be a honeymoon to McClellan, several pretty young ladies paid a visit to the relatives with whom he was staying, and he fell desperately in love with one of them, and abandoned his intention of returning to his Indian friends. He postponed his departure until he persuaded this young lady to marry him, and after that he settled down contentedly at the old homestead, and we believe he is still living there today. This is only one instance among a number of similar ones of the capture of children by the Indians, who, when restored to their relatives, became restless under the restraints of civilized society, and desired to return to the wild life they had led with the denizens of the forest and prairie. So this is, of course, just one story like that. Another story similar to John McLellan's was the unfortunate story of Cynthia Parker. So she was the mother of Quanah Parker. Like this young John McLellan here, Cynthia was captured during the raid on the Parker clan, in 1836. It was basically just a few months after the Battle of San Jacinto. The Comanches raided near what's present-day Groesbeck, Texas, so kind of near Waco, but a little east of there. And so they raided and they killed all the men, and then they took some of the women and children as captives. And so Cynthia Ann lived among the Indians, among the Comanches for many years. And she gave birth to Quanah Parker. She married another, another chief, and then when she was actually rescued later around around 1860s or 1870s or so. She was rescued, and she wanted to return to the Comanches, and she actually died within a short period of time. So within just a couple years, both her and her other daughter died, unfortunately. So if you want to hear more stories like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Unworthy History.